And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
There's no doubt in my mind that one of the most anticipated games of 2009 by far was Steam. Even though the cover doesn't really look like the most exciting in the world, where's the yellow? This is a reprint. A reprint's kind of a poor choice of words here. It's a retheming of Age of Steam. Age of Steam is a popular game by Martin Wallace. It was already reimagined once as the Railroad Tycoon series, which I actually enjoyed better than Age of Steam. And now along we have Steam, but Steam is different in the sense that it can actually use all the old Age of Steam maps, but it's still a game in its own right. Now in a future video, I'm going to compare Steam to Age of Steam bit by bit. In this one, I'm just going to talk about Steam as if you've never played the game before. So let's take a look at the game board itself. Here's one side of the board. The board comes with two different maps, so you can flip it, although one map is better for 3 to 4 players, the other map is better for 5 to 6 players, but you can play both sides with either amount of people. Each map starts with a bunch of cities on it, and you can see that these cities have different resource cubes on them. These resource cubes match the city colors of other cities. So for example, here you can see we're looking at Syracuse, which has 2 red cubes. Those red cubes need to be delivered to a red city. And you can see down here is a red city. New York, which has a yellow cube, which could be delivered to Syracuse, has a purple cube, which could be delivered up here to Hartford. And so the goal of this game is to take these cubes and deliver them to other cities. Players are going to be doing that by building a railroad network. For example, here I can use a couple of pieces of track to build a railroad connection between these two cities. And then once I've built that, let's say I'm the player orange, I will put an orange piece on that track to show that it's mine. And as the game progresses, you're going to find the colors, you're going to find that the railroad system is going to spring up all over the board, and it's very interesting. But what makes Steam the game that it is? One of the things is right over here on the side here, we can see these tiles. The gameplay takes a certain amount of turns depending on how many players are in the game. For example, in a 4-player game, there are 8 turns to the game. At the beginning of each turn, players are going to pick one of these tiles here in turn order. And by picking these tiles, whoever picks the lowest number, for example, whoever picks the number 1 tile, they're going to go first in the next turn. So by picking a tile, it's going to give you a special ability that you'll have during the course of the game, and also will determine the turn order for the next game. Now, after players pick one of these, then players are going to take turn building track on the board. They are then going to deliver the cubes. That sounds very simple, and in all reality it really is, but it's that interaction which makes the game as interesting as it is. Each of these tiles gives you a special ability, and that's a very important part of the game. As the game progresses, as I said, you'll build track, and players have money in the course of this game to build track with. And the money itself is basically a bunch of small coins that are in different denominations. If players start with no money, though, so they're forced to take shares. Players have an income track here on the side of the board, and every time I take a share, I move my marker down 1. That gives me $5 from the bank to spend, but it also means that I will be losing money every turn unless I can get my income back up. If I go up in income, obviously I can make money during the course of the game. So players will be spending money on track, and track costs more depending on where you build it. If you build it over rivers, it costs money. If you build it on mountains, if you build different connections between multiple cities, it might cost more money. But players are going to build track like this one down here. See, for example here, I built 3 pieces of track, which cost $2, $4, $6, and since this one went over the river, that's an extra $1, so that's $7 to build that track there. Players can only build 3 pieces of track per turn, and they build the track in turn order. However, if you picked this one here, the number 3 tile, you could build an extra tile, and if you pick the number 4 tile, you're the first person to build track, even if you're not first in turn order. And those are some pretty big deals. Also, the person who picked number 5 is allowed to put more resource cubes out on the board. They simply pick one of these groups of 3. For example, they could pick this group right here, 3 cubes, and put it in a city on the board. And then they'll mark that city to show that city can no longer have cubes added to it. Another tile that players can use is number 7 here, and it's the best thing to do, which is why it costs money. It actually costs $6 to do it, and you go last next turn, and that allows you to take one of these towns on the board and upgrade it to a city of the color of your choice. There are no gray towns on the board, so this is the only way to get those gray cubes delivered at all, is to build a gray town on the board. When you build one of these towns, you'll immediately put a group of 3 cubes in that town, which can then be delivered. When delivering goods, players can deliver them over all different sorts of tracks, but they'll usually want to do their own tracks. For example, here on my turn, if I'm delivering a cube, I can take this red cube here and use it over my track and get 1 point for my turn. If I built multiple tracks that go to multiple cities, I can move it even farther, getting up to 6 points. However, to do that, I'm also going to need to increase my engine. See, the engine for each player starts at level 1, where they can only move it over 1 line. But as time goes by, they can move it over more lines. In fact, they can even move it over the lines of other players, which will give other players points. But you might want to do that, for example, if I can move it over 4 of mine and 1 of yours, then that's worth doing to me. And so players will get multiple points as they move these cubes around. As cubes are moved to the city that they're supposed to go to, they do come off the board, and then players, obviously the cube amount gets more restricted. When players move cubes, they get points. Now what's interesting in this game is they have to decide either to increase their income track, which obviously gives you income between the turns and allows you to take more shares, or they increase their points at the bottom here. Points are what win you the game, but at the beginning of the game, income is more valuable because you need it to survive. So you have to decide whether to use income, take income, or points. And basically there's a certain point during the game where you stop taking income and now you simply just take points. The game takes place over a certain amount of turns, as I said earlier, and whoever has the most points after those turns wins. There's a few other niggling rules, such as you get 1 point for every track connection you have on the board. You get 1 point for every 2 income you have on the income track. And I'm not explaining the whole rules here exactly. I would probably spend about 15 or 20 minutes explaining them in person. But once you play the game, it's not that difficult because everything makes thematic sense. I said that I wasn't going to compare this to Age of Steam, but I will say that this game really, for me, blows Age of Steam out of the water. And I'll talk about that in another video. But one thing I really like about this set is it comes with a basic game and an advanced game. Most of the time, I'm interested in the advanced game. The basic game is something I play, and let's get the advanced game, because I like rules. However, in this game, the basic game is so much fun, and I never want to play the advanced game, although I have. The advanced game adds auctions to the game, and also makes it much more difficult to get money, and there's a few other rules that, basically, it makes the game more difficult. Now, some of you may really enjoy making a game harder. You know, the chance of going bankrupt is much higher. I like games that give you a bit of leeway, that are a bit more merciful, and that's how the basic game of this is. The idea of picking a tile to take your action and then it determining your turn order in the next turn, to me that's a fantastic one and really streamlines this game, making it a lot of fun. It is still a tight, tough, economical game, and if I would speak one negative thing about it, I would say that perhaps it seems like there's one turn too many. Every game I played, it felt like we were done one turn before and we just moved around a few cubes on the last turn. But other than that, that's still not that big of a deal. It's a tremendously interesting game. It plays just as well with 3 players as it does with 6, although I think I find it best with 4. And the fact that there's a plethora of maps that work with this game already means we'll be playing it for a longer time to come. Has great components, except for maybe using discs instead of trains for the pieces on the board. I would prefer to have a little bit more thematic appeal to it, but still, one of the best games of the year, certainly an upper tier accomplishment that makes Age of Steam really obsolete.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.